Good afternoon and welcome to the council meeting of December 3rd, 2024, which I will now call to order and ask if there are any declarations of interest from members of council. Seeing none, I will move forward with the land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental steward of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. Item D is our deputations. We have some deputations scheduled for this afternoon. I'd like to remind all deputants that you each have 5 minutes on the agenda to speak. I also want to remind everyone in attendance that we recognize some individuals may be passionate about the issues. However, we ask that you remain courteous and respectful during the meeting. Outbursts of cheering and clapping will not be tolerated. Thank you very much, and we will start with Jay Petejan making a deputation to council regarding item F, Budget Committee recommended 2025 business plan and budget amendments. Good afternoon. Good to have you with us.
It's always nice to be here. Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Councillors. Thank you for allowing me to present today. I present this deputation in association with our principals.ca in my own opinion and without prejudice. I would like to express my concerns about the 2025 budget proposal being discussed, as I'm a resident property owner. Okay, thank you very much. As I am a property owner and taxpayer of EG, I watched the video of November the 20th and came to these conclusions. Government's duties are to protect and serve their constituents and not to impose laws and regulations that do not seem fair or just. Thus, transparency and accountability are vital to every taxpayer in East Gwillimbury. I applaud the work done by council and the staff for their efforts, but I have some very worrisome concerns. I want to remind council that you can give accounts a variety of different names for a variety of different expenditures, but there is only one taxpayer, and it comes out of our pockets. I could talk about an assortment of issues, such as all the new staff hired last year, and again, the same similar number hired this year, or the consideration of purchasing EV vehicles when manufacturers around the world are significantly reducing their production outputs, or the discretionary funds used by a number of offices. At this time, I want to talk about asset management. Council has commented many times that our community is facing rapid growth and will require large amounts of infrastructure over the next decade. This puts a tremendous amount of pressure on our reserves for purchasing, repairs, and maintenance. What appears to me is that there is a serious shortfall in our reserves. This may be further compounded with future low building permits issued by EG, causing taxes to go higher. In reading the various reserve accounts and offsets applied to a number or numerous accounts, it all comes from the same place, the taxpayer. So as I look at the budget charts, there is no one line item indicating a total amount of all the reserves and the total amount of all the offsets from all the reserves. In my understanding, we are short in the neighborhood of about $10 million. Much of this can be contributed to major projects like libraries, health, active living center, new staff, and more. A 1% annual compounded year over year has been attached to property homeowners' tax bills for the past several years. It's very difficult to understand how a small community has gotten into this position. Presently, our reserve account is just under $5 million. This budget was planned to have a 1% increase to help rebuild the reserve fund, but an amendment was brought forward to reduce it to 0.25%. This will lower the residents' tax bill next year, but it may drive our taxes higher in the future as we try to catch up. This could end up being a critical error, jeopardizing repairs, maintenance, or any other emergency event in our parks, roads, or infrastructure owned by the town. Are we playing Russian roulette here? It's the taxpayers who consistently pay the price of mistakes being made by council. The requirements for the reserve fund are very important, as stated by our CAO. This is a long-term matter for the EG to deal with. Much of this will be handed off to the new asset manager to review. So why is part of his salary offset from the reserve fund? His role will be to commence a financial plan to be completed next year. This plan will highlight areas that the budget funds be allocated to, but it might be a little late as our budget will have been set for 2025. As many councillors like to comment, EG is debt-free. Just remember that the Ontario provincial law states no municipality is to operate in a deficit. It's taxpayers who pay the price. If I am misinformed with the above information, I would appreciate any clarification. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Could I have a mover and seconder for this presentation, please? Deputation. Councillor LaHaye, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried. Be it resolved that the deputation made by J. Petejan regarding item F, Budget Committee recommendation 2025 Business Plan and Budget Amendments be received. All those in favor? And that's carried. I believe Mr. Gamble would be next on the list. Good afternoon. Good to have you with us.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, councillors. First thing I want to do is I've shamelessly plagiarized what I'm about to read from a lady by the name of Laura Chambers in Calgary, Alberta. She put this in far better light than I could possibly have. Brian Mulrooney signed Canada into the United Nations Partners for Climate Protection in 1992. Along with 178 other countries, he and other leaders were lured by the promise of big money to go green. His signature made Canada a UN state, provinces became substates, and all municipalities became UN city-states, of which East Gwillimbury is one. By 2000, we saw countries governed by the direction of the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, and UN organizations that this council is probably quite familiar with, the International Council for Local and Environmental Issues, ICLEI. In March 2007, East Gwillimbury signed onto the PCP, Partners for Climate Protection, the first of many UN-sponsored programs. We know that you are familiar. Since 1994, all officials have received a copy of the municipal primer from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and ICLEI. That primer is what gives municipal governments who have signed on to ICLEI the direction on how to fraudulently restructure our government. And since 1994, none of the men and women that we have voted into municipal government have sworn an oath to the people they govern. Instead, immediately upon being elected, they signed the Municipal Act Declaration of Office. And that declaration, unlike oath to public office, has partnered them with a for-profit corporation, East Gwillimbury, and the current British monarch. It is interesting to note that if you identify as Indigenous, you are exempt from affirming allegiance to the Crown, as this would be inconsistent with your views regarding the relationship between the Crown and the Indigenous peoples. As many of us can state, we were born and lived in Canada for our entire lives and consider ourselves Indigenous. Regardless of Canada being a UN member state, no level of government has the authority to implement foreign mandates, bylaws, policies, treaties, or any other agreements with foreign powers to assist in any act of takeover of a country is an act of treason, according to Section 46 of the Canadian Criminal Code. And it is no longer a well-kept secret that the entities I've mentioned earlier want exactly that, a new world order with a world government. You who are elected government, unfortunately, your authority has been undermined and eroded through international contracts and fraudulent public-private partnerships. These contracts must be revisited publicly, and they must be rescinded. So we, the people of East Gwillimbury, are putting you on notice. There is concrete evidence that you sit in 3 different legal capacities: public, private, and international, with no authority to sign for any of them. We, the people of East Gwillimbury, understand that we're electing you, and you will be asked to provide or produce your oaths of office if you wish to sit in chambers and state that you are holding public consent. Until your allegiance to the citizens of East Gwillimbury is proven, not the allegiance to the Crown, King Charles, the people of East Gwillimbury are not to be included in any further bylaws, rezonings, etc., and are therefore not subject to any further service agreements with this municipality. Please note that a failure to answer is an answer. If you refuse to produce your amended oath of office, pledging allegiance to the residents, it will indicate that you have abdicated your elected duties as our public trustees and therefore hold no representative authority. We further suggest you seek legal counsel. In the coming weeks, you will each receive a package that will give you direct links to information that will validate my claims. I hope you all understand the immense personal liability this corporate contract has created for you. This chamber must review the contracts that you have made now, and that you are privy to this information. You must reclaim and reassert the proper trusteeship with the electors of East Gwillimbury within 30 days following this deputation. We hope you will be honest, you will do the honest and honorable thing. Step up, step down, step aside. I've included references in a document I will handle out. I won't take up the time right now. Thank you. I assume there's no questions.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions at this time. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Crothers. Be it resolved that the deputation made by Jay Gamble regarding item F, Budget Committee recommended 2025 business plan and budget amendments be received. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. We're at item E in our agenda with presentations. At this time, there are no presentations. Item F is Budget Committee recommended amendments to the mayor's budget. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Hay, go
Yes,
ahead.
Madam Mayor, yes, before we vote on the recommendations, I'm wondering if we're going to vote on them separately or all together, as I have a question with regard to the budget meeting held on November 20th.
I'm quite amenable, whether it's individually or collectively at this point. My thought was that it would be moved collectively, but if there are items that will be discussed, then I have no problem with that either.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I have one question with regard to one component of the discussions on November 20th, and it's with regard to the mayor and council expenditure funds that are allocated towards the community outreach and towards communications with our constituents. We significantly proposed by fellow councillors to basically eliminate them and reduce them by more than 80% approximately. And so that poses some restrictions on councillors, and so I was hoping to ask the question of our CAO in terms of the parameters around individual councillors communicating with the public. Could you clarify what those parameters are in terms of communicating with the public as individual councillors?
Mr. Valchek?
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure how to provide an answer to the question. I'm assuming that, given that I'm not an elected official, I'm not out doing what you do, but I'm assuming that you're out meeting with your constituents, you're perhaps having meetings with them, perhaps you're corresponding back and forth by email. There might be other means that you're communicating, so I'm not sure I would be the right person to ask in terms of how or when or what would be communicated between the elected officials and the constituents. So sorry if I've misunderstood the question, but I think it's really up to the individual council members.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I will clarify. I'll make my question more simpler. In terms of, because the funding for communication outreach has been so significantly reduced for individual councillors, my question is then, it poses limitations for councillors who choose to communicate with residents in different ways, whether that's a physical newsletter, et cetera, by the very small sum that we will now have at our disposal. So with regard to what the parameters are, I'm wondering how we can effectively do that with such a limited budget. And so that's what I'm seeking some more information around moving forward after if we approve these amendments.
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure that I can provide you with guidance on that other than to say that from a corporate point of view, we do provide sort of overall organizational communications to the public on a whole wide variety of matters of town business and of public interest. In terms of individual members of council, that budget deliberation really rests with council to determine what resources the budget committee and ultimately council believes are appropriate for you to augment that with additional individual communications of your choice. And so I really think that decision about what that allocation is rests with budget committee and with council. From staff's perspective, I don't really know that I can advise further on that in particular.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. So just for clarity and for, because this is the first time we're going through the process this way and voting on the amendments now. So what are the options in the future, Madam Mayor, if we vote on amendments now, but in the new year we discover there's a situation or there's some reason to make an amendment in 2025 to the budget that we're passing in December? What are our options in the future if we wish to amend further?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, generally speaking, once you've set the budget, our operating budget, and in particular tax levy and revenues, have been established for the coming year. The only sort of place that I can say you have some additional discretion throughout the year is if there are time-specific or unexpected, unplanned emergency circumstances, then in-year decisions could be made tapping into town reserves to deal with any items that have not been covered or cannot be covered under the approved budget. But at that point, there certainly would already be an established decision of council, in this case, the mayor's budget, once it goes through the entire process, that would establish tax levy and defined revenue. Beyond that, you do have the ability, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes if there was something time-specific or emergency type of nature during a year, then it is possible that reserves could be used upon the direction of council mid-year if needed.
Thank you very much.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to, I know that we made a resolution to adopt one of the additional packages that we received, and in that package was the public feedback that we received through the budget process. There was a significant amount of outreach that staff undertook, and that material was, normally in prior years, we would have made a motion to receive that specifically, and it was blended into one of the ancillary packages. And I did want to have an opportunity to address that, because I think in all of the budgets that I have sat through and worked on, that was probably the most helpful, fulsome, constructive piece of outreach that I've seen. And I wanted to commend staff on having assembled that for us and express my appreciation. I also did find that there were a couple of items in there that weren't necessarily touching on particular budget items, but for example, there were some themes that emerged, and one of them was sidewalk maintenance, and that people were feeling that a better attention could be given to sidewalk maintenance. There were other items that I think touched on in the budget, but I just wanted to raise that here and sort of acknowledge that we asked the community for feedback, and we got it. And I wanted to acknowledge that there was some significant things in there that I'm hoping staff will have a look at, just as they're dealing with their day-to-day work plans on an operational matter, on the operational side of things, to make sure that if there's a low-hanging fruit that's in that feedback, that we can work to address it. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? I'm not seeing any at this time. We have in front of us the adoption of the 2025 business plan and budget amendments from the following meetings: November 18, November 20th, and November 27th. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone. Councillor.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a point before we take our vote?
You may.
May it be a recorded vote, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Councillor Crothers. Okay.
Can you clarify exactly what we're voting on, please?
We're
Thank you.
voting on council adoption of the recommended 2025 business plan and budget amendments from the following meetings: Budget Committee meeting held on November 18th, 2024, Budget Committee meeting held on November 20th, 2024, and Budget Committee meeting held on November 27th, 2024. Councillor Crothers?
Thank you. Can we just get clarity between F and G? There's the recommendations, and then it appears we're going to do the same thing again under the next one. It's the first time we've been through this strong mayor's budget, so if we can just get clarity on why we're voting twice and which one supersedes which one. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor. F is specifically addressing the amendments, and this is an avenue that we've worked with finance staff to ensure that it's meeting compliance in terms of council considering the amendments. The balance of the recommendations from Budget Committee meetings that did not have amendments are reflected below later on in the agenda. So the difference is, right now, Budget Council is considering just the amendments that were proposed to the mayor's budget.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Leahy?
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. I would like to ask a question of our treasurer. So if all of the amendments as they are now pass today, what does that represent in terms of a final percentage increase in property taxes?
So through you, Madam Mayor, if all the amendments are approved today, there is a 6.85% impact on the tax levy. 2.4% of that is on our base programs and services, and the balance is for things such as investment in our emergency services and our investment in our health and active living plaza and asset management.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your request? Thank you. Are there any more questions? I'm not seeing any.
Madam Mayor, this resolution has been moved by Councillor Crone, seconded by Councillor Carruthers, and Councillor Leahy has requested for a recorded vote. Councillor Leahy, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Carruthers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Crone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Foster, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Haxon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Johns, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Roy DeClemente, how do you vote?
Yes.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that motion's been passed.
Thank you. We are now on item G, and this is committee recommendations to adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendations from the meeting held on November 19th, 2024. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente, thank you. Any questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I have a question for our treasurer, and it just occurred to me now after that vote. But the increase of 6.85% this year, in the context of the past 3 years, am I correct in saying that it represents an increase of more than 19% in property taxes over the past 3 years?
Go ahead,
So-
please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I do the math quickly, if you let me do the math, I can figure out if that's correct or not, but that sounds about in the area. However, inflation has also been around that amount as well. So it's still kind of in line with inflation, but let me check the numbers and I can get back to you shortly.
Councillor Carruthers, you had a question?
Sorry, I was just confused as to where we are. I thought the budget had already been voted on, and I thought we were talking about committee recommendations from November 19th. Just want clarification where we are on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you for indulging me in asking that question. It only occurred to me to have a total of the past 3 years after we had taken the previous vote. So I think for the benefit of information, while we have it here on the spot, before we have our final vote to approve the overall budget, then amendments to the budget, that I'd like to understand clearly that it represents 6.85% increase this year, when in addition with the previous 2 years, it represents an overall 19% increase in property taxes for residents of East Gwillimbury.
Mr. Marshall?
So through you, Madam Mayor, in our presentation that we used to start off the deliberations, I'm just going to pull up the correct slide.
Thank you.
I just got it in my hand, sorry. And so for, on our base programs and services, our tax levy increase from 2023 and 2024 was about 6%. So with our 2.4% tax levy increase on our base programs and services. That gets you to about close to 9%. Inflation during that period was 11, it was about 13% at that point in time. So if you add the inflation, if you take the difference between the inflation and our base programs and services, we're still well below inflation at that time.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. If I remember correctly, in 2023, the overall property tax increase was 5.55% in 2023. And in 2024, it was 6.7 or so percent. And then we're looking at increasing it this year for 2025, 6.85%. So that comes to roughly an increase in 19% overall for the past 3 years. Is that correct?
Through
Yes,
you,
please.
Madam Mayor, I was referring to our base programs and services, which is what the staff are controlling. The additional increase was for additional things such as investment in our health and active living plaza and asset management and investment in community safety, which is something which I believe council has looked at as an investment.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So my point is, and what I would like to clarify, is that every year we go through the budget process and we come up with a final number that we present to the residents of East Gwillimbury. And so my understanding is that the final number for everything in 2023 was 5.55%, and in 2024 it was 6.7 odd percent, and that this year it's being passed at 6.85%. So that would approximately represent an increase over the past 3 years of roughly 19%. Is that correct?
So through you, Madam Mayor, if you go back to 2022, we passed a 1% increase, and 2021, we passed a 0. So if you look at the 5 years, the whole, we're still at that 19%, or about 20%, which is still lower than the rate of inflation over that period in time.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
I have some other people who'd like to speak, so I'll come back to you. Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I believe we're on item G, which is committee recommendations, but since we've gone back to budget, I just was hoping that Mr. Marshall could comment on lowest relative taxes. That's one of the directions that council gave our staff, was to make sure that once all was said and done, that East Gwillimbury residents continue to enjoy the lowest relative taxes in all of York Region. And I wanted to make sure we know, but I wanted to get it on the record, that we have maintained that position, that the taxes that are paid in East Gwillimbury are lower than neighboring municipalities. And I'm wondering, Mr. Marshall, if you could just speak to that, please. Thank you.
Mr. Marshall?
So through you, Madam Mayor, with the, even including the increase that we're proposing that we just passed, we still will maintain our status as the lowest relative taxes on a detached dwelling in York Region, and it's by about $500 without even considering the tax increases that will be passed by other municipalities.
Thank you for your hard work on that and making sure that we maintain that status. It's something that's very important to council. And with that, I'm hoping we can resume the agenda where we were on G.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we were on G. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the committee of the whole recommendations from the meeting held on November 19th, 2024? Councillor Crothers. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Crone. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We'll move from G. Item number 2 is to adopt the committee of the whole council recommendations from the meeting held on December 3rd, 2024. We have one recommendation from today's committee of the whole meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Johns. Be it resolved that the December 10th, 2024 council workshop be canceled and that the resolution be ratified at the December 3rd, 2024 municipal council meeting. All those in favor? And that's carried. I'm now at item number 2, to adopt the Budget Committee recommendations from the following meetings. Budget Committee meeting held on November 18th, 2024, Budget Committee meeting held on November 20th, 2024, and Budget Committee meeting held on November 27th, 2024. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DiClemente, do you want to just speak?
Yeah, I just was going to request a recorded vote on those as well, please, but I'm happy to move it. Thank you.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Foster. And we have a recorded vote request. Thank you.
Through you, Madam.
Yes, correct.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the council is considering the adoption of the Budget Committee recommendations. As we discussed earlier, these are not the amendments. These are just additional recommendations from the Budget Committee meetings. Councillor Roy DiClemente has moved this item. Councillor Crone has seconded it. And Councillor Roy DiClemente, you have requested for a recorded vote. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Crone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Foster, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Haxton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Johns, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Leahy, how do you vote?
No.
Madam Mayor, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. We- Is there a question? Moving along to item H, adoption of minutes. And this is the Committee of the Whole minutes from the meeting held on November 19th, 2024. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Carruthers, Councillor. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Item number 2, to adopt the council minutes from the following meeting. Special meeting held on November 19th, 2024. Regular meeting held on November 19th, 2024. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster. Seconder. Councillor Carruthers. All those in favor? That's carried. Be it resolved that council adopt the following minutes. Council minutes from the special meeting held on November 19th. I've dealt with that one already. Number 3, to adopt the Budget Committee meeting minutes from the following meetings. Budget Committee meeting held on November 18th, 2024. Budget Committee meeting held on November 20th, 2024. Budget Committee meeting held on November 27th, 2024. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DiClemente. Councillor Carruthers. Be it resolved that council adopt the following minutes. Budget Committee minutes from the meeting held on November 18th, 2024. Budget Committee minutes from the meeting held on November 20th, 2024. And Budget Committee minutes from the meeting held on November 27th. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item I is correspondence for consideration. And there are none at this time. Item J is reports, none at this time. Item K is bylaws, none at this time. Item L is other business, we have none at this time. And Item M is a confirming bylaw. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Yes, go ahead, please.
Just wanted to make a comment. We've just processed, I think it's over 67 pages of minutes and committee recommendations. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work of the clerk's department in putting that forward for us. That was a lot of work, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am down to...
Sorry to
Nope.
interrupt your flow.
No,
I'm happy-
that's okay.
happy to have adjournment.
I can bring it back quickly. I'm in the confirming bylaw. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DeClemente, Councillor Carruthers. Be it resolved that the bylaw 2024-082, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council meeting held on December 3rd, 2024, be taken as read and acted and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And I'm at item N, as you all have in your agenda as well, and that is an adjournment. I need a mover, please. Councillor Foster, thank you. Be it resolved that the meeting of council adjourn at, I need a seconder as well. Councillor, thank you. Be it resolved that the meeting of council adjourn at 2:41 p.m. All in favor? And that's carried.